Hi everyone, Jacob Howard here, and in this video we are going to tackle radio transmitters. For most people, you are probably going to call this the controller, but the actual term is the transmitter, and you will see why in a minute. A radio remote control transmitter, or TX for short, is a device that will translate inputs such as switch and stick movements into radio waves that are then received by your drone's receiver and translated into aircraft movement. There are several different shapes and sizes of transmitters, from traditional to modern looking, and even smaller gamer style ones. Each one has its own set of features that it offers, but they all will accomplish the same goal: controlling your drone. So buying a specific TX usually comes down to personal preference. Channels. TXs use a system of channels to control the aircraft. A basic setup would be one channel controlling the throttle, one channel controlling pitch, another channel controlling roll, and so on. Most FPV drones use up to 6 channels for controlling all the different functions on the drone. For this reason, you want to make sure you choose a TX that has at least 6 channels. Most on the market have options between 8 to 16 channels, with some offering even more. Gimbals. Most TXs have things called gimbals. These are the sticks that the pilot uses to control the drone. Some TXs allow for customized gimbals that allow you to change the top of the stick out for different style thumb/finger grips. Another important customization to consider is that whether or not to get gimbals with things called Hall effect sensors. Traditional gimbals come with potentiometers or variable resistors to sense the position of the stick, basically how the TX reads where your stick is. These parts include a brush that moves across a resistive surface to tell where your stick is. Obviously, over time, these parts begin to wear out and become unreliable. On a gimbal with Hall effect sensors, the sensors use a magnetic field to detect the position of the stick. These parts do not come in contact with each other, which make them more resilient to wear over time, and the magnetic field makes them much more accurate. Although they can be a little more expensive, we recommend getting a controller with Hall effect gimbals. They will last longer, and in the long run, they are worth the investment. Modes. When you purchase a TX, it will most likely be set to a default mode. A mode is what determines what stick controls are assigned to what channel. For example, mode 1 has the right stick controls set to throttle and roll, and the left stick controls are set to yaw and pitch. Whereas in mode 2, the much more popular mode, right stick controls are set to pitch and roll, and the left stick controls throttle and yaw. For consistency, we recommend people get controllers set up for mode 2. Frequencies and protocols. Both the TX and receiver need to be operating on the same frequencies and protocols in order to operate correctly. Most modern-day controllers run on the 2.4 GHz band and use digital protocols to encode the signal to reduce the risk of interference and signal interruption by another pilot or radio source. 2.4 GHz does have limitations though. Past 0.4 miles, you start to run the risk of losing signal. This is why a lot of pilots that fly longer range prefer to use long-range modules like the FreeSky R9 or the TBS Crossfire on their radios that allow you to transmit on 900 MHz frequencies. This allows the drone to fly a mile or more away without losing TX signal. Protocols are kind of like the language that the TX talks to the receiver with. For example, if your TX is not transmitting within the correct protocol, even if the signal reaches the receiver, it still won't be able to understand it. So both the TX and the receiver need to be on the same protocols to work. A general rule of thumb is that each brand name of radio has its own protocol, so therefore you're going to want to stick to one brand of radio/receiver and also one frequency. For example, a 2.4 GHz transmitter must be paired with a 2.4 GHz receiver. Software. Every TX has firmware or software that controls the interface and programming of the TX. Most TXs run an open source firmware called OpenTX. This firmware is very customizable and gives the user a lot of programming options on the radio, controls, and switches. Now, the TX may seem a little intimidating to someone picking it up for the first time, but rest assured that with just a little learning, you will become comfortable with handling and operating your TX. The two main controls on the TX are the sticks. These control the channels that move the drone. All the switches you see on a controller are actually customizable to do the things needed to operate your drone, such as arm the motors, switch flight modes, activate beepers, and so on. Safety. One big safety tip before we conclude. If you handle a TX, it's advisable to know what switch is set up as the arm switch. This is the switch that activates the motors on the drone. This switch should be treated like the trigger on a gun. If it gets accidentally activated, there could be serious damage done to your drone, yourself, a bystander, or personal property. Never leave the arm switch activated when moving the drone or when moving your TX around or switching pilots. Always disarm your drone and be extra careful not to arm it when people are near your drone, and always use caution when handling someone else's TX. Range. Most TXs come with onboard antennas. These can be swapped out to possibly give you some longer range results, but usually the result is not worth the investment. Instead, if you wish to go long range with your TX, it is better to work on other safety features first, like installing GPS, beepers, and long range modules. It's a good idea to choose a good quality TX that will suit your needs as you're getting into FPV. It will save you money from having to upgrade in the future and will hopefully be something you only have to buy once. If you enjoyed this video on FPV, we actually have an entire online course developed around these same types of lessons. We're talking dozens of lessons and hours of material designed to get you started into FPV or make you a better pilot. It is the world's first online FPV course, and we have students from around the world learning through it. The link to learn more is in the comments below. And as always, if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know, and have fun flying.